Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rūpa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rūpam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Nama Om Vishnu Padhaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarini He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So welcome back to the Friday and Saturday morning series on the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Rūpa Goswami, Rūpa Śikṣā. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has been describing to Rūpa Goswami how, by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, one gets the Bhakti Lata beach, and with the Shravanadi Jal, with the process of hearing and chanting, which is the Anga of Sadhana Bhakti, slowly the Bhakti Lata grows and it pierces this Brahmanda, crosses the Viraja river, and then it passes through the Vaikuntha planets, and ultimately it gives the fruit of Krishna Prem when it takes complete shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna Charana Pave Paye Prema Phal. You will get the fruit of Krishna, love of Krishna, when ultimately the Bhakti Lata reaches the lotus feet of Krishna in Golok Vrindavan, that is Sham Sundar Krishna. But Kintu Yadi Vaishnava Prad Uche Hati Mata. But if while cultivating this bhakti, while the creeper is growing, if one commits a Vaishnava Aparad, then the creeper is uprooted from the root, especially when one commits a very, very severe offense against very exalted devotees. In and out, sometimes when we commit offenses to Vaishnavas, then the Bhakti Lata creeper dries off. And that's why we feel not so enthusiastic in chanting the holy names, not so taste in doing devotional activities. So sometimes it can dry up, but when especially offense is committed to an exalted spiritual master, then it can completely uproot the Bhakti Lata from the root, and that is the mad elephant offense, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has described. And then Mahaprabhu has given the solution. You have to cover yourself. Avarna. Just like the gardener fences the garden so that the wild animals will not come and eat the trees or the creepers. Similarly, we should guard ourselves by associating with always devotees and following the regulative principles. So this is what yesterday we discussed. Today, further continuing this discussion, Mahaprabhu is going to describe now another kind of obstacles while cultivating the Bhakti Lata creeper. Now, we have all experienced that we might grow a particular plant, and when we plant that seed and start watering, especially those who are in agriculture, they are very much conversant that when you grow sugarcane or you grow some other crop, along with the crop, there are other weeds also. They are also getting nourishment of water, and they are there inside in the soil, and they also start growing. So these are called as the upashakas. And now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to speak about these upashakas. So let us see this. Kintu yadi latara sange ute upashaka bhukti mukti vancha yata asankhya tara lekha. Sometimes unwanted creepers, upashaka, such as the creepers of desires for material enjoyment and liberation. Bhukti mukti vancha. So, just like in the agricultural field, the main crop is there. Along with that, weeds like grass and other things, shrubs grow. So similarly, these other weeds, what are there along with the pure Bhakti Lata Bij, is the desires for material enjoyment and liberation. So as we practice sadhana bhakti and as we are watering the Bhakti Lata creeper with Shravanadi, these other desires in the form of anarthas are there already in the heart. Just like the weeds are there in the soil. And when the farmer waters, the weeds grow. Similarly, these other desires are there because of our impressions or vasanas, which are there from millions of lives. So as we are watering with the Shravanadi Jal, all these other weeds also start growing up. The desires for mukti and bhukti, they come up. But these are anarthas. We should understand that these are anarthas and we should carefully avoid them. So the desires for material enjoyment and liberation from the world grow along with the devotional, along with the creeper of devotional service. Uthe upashaka. These are called as upashakas. This is not the main shaka. The main shaka is the Bhakti Lata. The varieties of such unwanted creepers are unlimited. So two things here in this verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that there are anya shaka, upashakas, and prominently they are bhukti and mukti, vajja. And there are asankhya tara lekha, and there are like this unlimited other varieties of unwanted creepers. So let us see what Prabhupada has to say. No, Prabhupada's purport is not there. I think together he gives a purport. Now, what is this yata asankhya tara lekha? Some few things Mahaprabhu describes in the next verse. Nishiddhachar Kutinati Jiva Himsan Labha Puja Pratishtadi Yata Upashaka Gan. Some unnecessary creepers going with the bhakti creepers are the creepers of behavior unacceptable for those trying to attain perfection. Nishiddhachar. So one of the creepers is Nishiddhachar. Diplomatic behavior, Kutinati, Jiva Himsan, animal killing, and Labha Puja Pratishta, mundane profiteering, mundane adoration, and mundane importance, Pratishta. All these are unwanted creepers. Yata Upashaka Gan. So these are the Upashakas which Mahaprabhu is describing. So let us see now Prabhupada's purport. Very interesting and very important purport. Let us focus on each of these Upashakas, how Prabhupada is describing. There is a certain pattern of behavior prescribed for those actually trying to become perfect. So here, which Upashaka is Prabhupada speaking about? Anyone? Which Upashaka is Prabhupada describing now? Among all these, Nishiddhachar, Kutinati, Jivahimsa, Labha Puja, Pratishtadi, which Upashaka is Prabhupada describing in the purport in the first line? Yes, Manoj Prabhu. I've unmuted you.
You have unmuted me, sir. It must be Kutinati.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Prabhuji, this is about the behavior of the devotees.
Yeah. Achar means right behavior. Nishiddhachar means prohibited behavior. Yes, it is Nishiddhachar. It is not Kutinati. So there is a certain pattern of behavior prescribed for those actually trying to become perfect. In our Krishna conscious movement, we advise our students not to eat meat, not to gamble, not to engage in illicit sex, and not to indulge in intoxication. So following these 4 regulative principles is the right achar. And when we start deviating from these 4 regulative principles, then that is Nishiddhachar. People who indulge in these activities can never become perfect. Therefore, these regulative principles are for those interested in becoming perfect and going back to Godhead. So Prabhupada is very heavy here. If those who indulge in these 4 kind of activities, they cannot become perfect. And therefore, following these regulative principles is a must for those who are serious to become perfect and go back to Godhead. Now, next Prabhupada explains about Kutinati, diplomatic behavior. Diplomatic behavior cannot satisfy the Atma, the soul. It cannot even satisfy the body and mind. So what a remarkable definition. When we behave very diplomatically, we ourselves internally become unsatisfied. So the soul is unsatisfied, the body is unsatisfied, the mind is also unsatisfied. The culprit mind is always suspicious. Therefore, our dealing should be always straightforward and approved by Vedic authorities. So, opposite of duplicity is what? What is the opposite of duplicity? Anyone? Yes, Dr. Archana Mataji.
Straightforwardness.
Straightforwardness. Any other word you can use for that? Duplicity, opposite of it. Okay, Tirthpad Prabhu.
Simplicity, Prabhuji.
Simplicity. Opposite of duplicity is simplicity. So, of course, today we cannot go into all these various aspects, but just to define what is simplicity, there is a beautiful Shubhashita in Sanskrit, which is quoted. I'll try to find the reference. It says, one should speak what he thinks. One should speak what he thinks, and one should act what he thinks. So I speak in front of a devotee, oh, you're such a great devotee. But in my thought, I'm saying, you're speaking some other things in the mind. But in words, you're speaking, oh, you're a nice devotee, and backside you are criticizing him. And I say, oh, in my mind, I think, in my thoughts, I think I should do some service for the Lord. I speak about it in the mind, but I don't perform any actions. So our actions, our thoughts, and our speech, all 3 should be in straight line. This is simplicity. This is called as saralta. So in my mind, I have some other agenda, but no, in front of that devotee, I speak something else. This is duplicity. And this doesn't satisfy the Atma, Prabhupada is saying. So Saralta hi Vaishnavata. That's what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said. So that's why Prabhupada is saying that the culprit mind is always suspicious. Therefore, our dealing should be straightforward. They should be simple and straightforward. Very straightforward we should be. If we treat people diplomatically, dupliciously, our spiritual advancement is obstructed. Now Prabhupada speaks about Jiva Himsa. Jiva Himsa refers to killing of animals or to envy of other living entities. So especially envying other living entities or envying devotees who are more advanced than us. So this is also a kind of Jiva Himsa. The killing of poor animals is undoubtedly due to envy of those animals. In fact, the real root reason why people eat meat is they get pleasure of the pain what they have undergone, and in that they take pleasure. That is the root cause of eating meat. So killing of poor animals is due to envy to those animals. The human form is meant for understanding of Krishna consciousness, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, for inquiring about the Supreme Brahman. In the human form, everyone has a chance to understand the Supreme Brahman. The so-called leaders of human society do not know the real aim of human life and are therefore busy with economic development. This is misleading. Now here Prabhupada is mentioning that human form of life is meant to understand God. And if we are obstructing the soul's understanding of God, that means we are not giving this knowledge to the common people, then it is also Jiva Himsa. It is also Jiva Himsa. Very interesting definition of Jiva Himsa Prabhupada is giving. If the leaders are not propagating dharma and taking the jiva to the point of Atato Brahma Jigyasa and connecting to the Supreme Lord, they are actually doing Jiva Himsa. If the leaders are propagating artha without any dharma and ultimately the paro dharma, that is Krishna prem, then it is Jiva Himsa. Every state and every society is busy trying to improve the quality of eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. This human form of life is meant for more than these four animal principles. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are problems found in animal kingdom. And the animals have solved these problems without difficulty. Why should human society be so busy trying to solve these problems? The difficulty is that people are not educated to understand the simple philosophy. So people should be educated only in understanding dharma, not education of how to eat, how to sleep, how to mate, and how to defend. These animals can do with more sophistication and they can do much better than human beings. If we are engaged in that, then what is the difference between us and human beings, us and animals? They think that advancement of civilization means increasing sense gratification. There are many religious propagandists who do not know how the ultimate problems of life can be solved, and they are also try to educate people in the form of sense gratification. This is also Jiva Himsa. What a profound explanation of what exactly is Jiva Himsa. Very, very interesting explanation by Prabhupada. Real knowledge is not given, and religious mislead the general populace. As far as material profits are concerned, one should know that whatever material profit one has must be abandoned at the time of death. Now, what is Prabhupada speaking about? After Nishiddhachar and then Jiva Himsa, what is Prabhupada speaking about now? Anyone? I will share the screen from this point onwards. As far as material profits are concerned, one should know that whatever material profit one has earned must be abandoned at the time of death. What is Prabhupada discussing now? Yes, Birendra Yadav Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Is discussing about Labha, bro. Labha.
Yes, Labh. So Labh, Puja and Pratishtha, all three go together. He is discussing about Labh. Unfortunately, people do not know that there is life after death. Therefore, mundane people waste their time amassing material profit, which has to be left behind at the time of death. Such profits has no eternal benefit. So, trying to attain labh, acquire assets and wealth, this is the anartha. So, with the practice of devotional service, if these anarthas are growing, then we have to do what is called as anartha nivritti. So, there is a phrase which we say, from anartha nivritti to artha pravritti. We have to recognize these anarthas, and the real artha is Krishna, the artha pravritti, doing the positive things, not just avoiding the negative, but doing the positive things. Just for example, greed, mundane greed by which we want to acquire things more and more is an anartha. And Shadbir Bhaktir Vinashati, Laulyam also can cause what? Destruction of bhakti. So this is anartha. And what is the real artha pravritti? The real artha pravritti is to develop spiritual greed for Krishna Katha, greed for chanting, greed for seva. So we have to go from anartha nivritti to artha pravritti in order to become free from these upashakas. Similarly, adoration by mundane people is valueless because after death, one has to accept another body. That adoration is for the body and the body is going to die. Material adoration and titles are decorations that cannot be carried over to the next body. In the next life, everything is forgotten. Everything is forgotten. All these obstructions have been described this verse as unwanted creepers. They simply present obstacles for the real creeper, the Bhakti Lata. One should be very careful to avoid these unwanted creepers. One should be very, very careful, Prabhupada is saying. So these are anarthas. We need to recognize them. They are deep-rooted in the heart. And sometimes we cannot see ourselves. We cannot see in our heart ourselves. Like, we hold a mirror and see our face. So we cannot observe ourselves. So that is why we have to be under the observation of our seniors, our spiritual mentors. They can observe sometimes. If we have a very deep and sincere relationship with our spiritual mentors, and they can see these anarthas and they can point out as a service and they can help us. Sometimes these unwanted creepers look exactly like the bhakti creeper. Exactly, they look like that. Now, Prabhupada is describing something which is very, very important now for us to know. Just like sometimes when you grow a particular creeper, like a tulsi plant, along with that there is another plant that also looks like a tulsi plant. It is very difficult to distinguish between the two. Only an expert gardener can recognize the real plant and recognize the upashaka and take the weeds out. So similarly, only a spiritual master can recognize the upashakas. And by pointing out them, he can remove these anarthas from our heart. They appear to be the same size and of the same species. Like the tulsi and the basil is growing. Very similar they look. When they are packed together with the bhakti creeper. But in spite of these creepers are called upashaka. A pure devotee can distinguish between the bhakti creeper and the mundane creeper, and he is very alert to distinguish them and keep them separate. So when this puja pratishtha comes, if we start taking pleasure in it, that means we are giving water to the upashakas and they are growing and the bhakti lata is getting stunted. So here Prabhupada is saying very clearly, a pure devotee can only distinguish the bhakti creeper and the mundane creeper, and is very, very alert to distinguish them and keep them separate. Now, it is not here in this verse, but I would like to describe something which Jiva Goswami speaks also quite in-depth analysis he does in his Sandarbhas. Now, as we practice our bhajan in the association of devotees, gradually, very gradually, because we don't practice bhajan continuously, we don't practice completely Shuddha Bhakti. Shuddha Bhakti means it has to be practiced all the time without any break. So we are practicing bhakti core activities like hearing and chanting in the morning, reading Gita, Bhagavatam, but it is not practiced all the time without any break. So nevertheless, we are practicing some core activities of bhakti, and with this practice of bhajan, the anarth nivritti is happening. And there are 6 stages in bhajan kriya. One is called as utsamai, second is called as ghanatarala, third is called as vyuda vikalpa, fourth is called as the Vishaya Sangara, fifth is called as niyamakshama, and the 6th one is called as Tarangarangini. So in the beginning stages, we are very enthusiastic. Enthusiasm means love in one sense. So being very enthusiastic, we perform devotional activities very enthusiastically, but this is not a real enthusiasm. That's why it is called as Utsa-mahi. Utsa-mahi. It's not real Utsa. So because still the heart is affected with anarthas and the modes are there disturbing the heart. But there is some natural love towards devotees, towards deities, towards the process, bhakti process. So this is what sustains our devotion also. But as we practice our bhajan, we are very enthusiastic. Oh, tomorrow, every day I'll get up at 4 o'clock and till 6:30 I'll chant my 16 rounds. You begin with the resolution and few days you do, then your utsamaya stage comes down slowly and your bhajan becomes sometimes ghana, sometimes tarala. Ghana means thick, taral means thin. So first few days you very enthusiastically practice your chanting of 16 rounds in the early morning. But after a few days, you become slack. You are not able to get up. What to speak of chanting in the morning? You are not able to finish till late night also you're chanting. Why? Because there are anarthas. The heart is not pure. There is no purity. And that's why there is, thick and thin phases in your spiritual life you're going through. Then the next level is vyuda vikalpa. The intelligence oscillates between, whether in the grahasthashram I should continue and practice, make my wife, children, Krishna conscious devotees, or whether I should retire from family life and go to Vrindavan and exclusively practice bhajan. Sometimes I hear Bharat Maharaj story, how he left the kingly life and immediately went to the forest. So like that, hearing the scriptures, one is not able to resolve and be steady in his bhajan because the intelligence is oscillating between these. He's indecisive about it. So his bhajan is oscillating like that. Vyuda vikalpa. And then the next stage is Vishaya Sangara. Vishaya Sangara means what? Battling with the senses. The senses, there is a tug of war happening between the senses and sense objects. So the Atma is on one side, the intelligence, the mind, the senses, sense objects are on the other side, and they're pulling. The sense objects are pulling the senses, mind and intelligence on one side. The soul is weak, and the soul is trying with his spiritual practices, Guru Sadhu instructions, he's trying to say no to sense enjoyment. So there is a tug of war going on. And after this, the 5th stage is niyamakshama. So you take a vow. In Kartik, I will chant every day 32 rounds. First few days you do, and then you are not able to maintain that vow. You're not able to uphold your vows. Again, because lack of purity of heart. Because the heart is not yet pure. Because there are anarthas. And the 6th stage is called as Tarangarangini. Tarangas means the waves. Just like in the ocean, there are waves. And sometimes a surfer who is on the waves, he is nicely surfing and relishing. Similarly, devotee, he is quite advanced in spiritual life because he has gone through the stages of bhajan kriya. Utsamai, Ghanatarala, Vyuda Vikalpa, Vishaya Sangara. Niyamakshama, and now he's on the stage of Tarangarangini. So at this stage, because of the fringe benefits of bhakti, devotees give him respect, devotees offer him respect, devotees give him donations, they give him a lot of honor. So he's glorified because of his classes. So all this he starts taking pleasure and actually doesn't dive deep into the ocean and take only pleasure in devotional activities. He takes pleasure in all the fringe benefits of bhakti. Puja la pratishta. This is what actually is Tarangarangini in one sense. So that's why I discussed these 6 stages of purification, what one goes through the stages of Bhajan Kriya. Of course, I did not make a slide to show the 6 names, but I hope everyone could follow this. The first is Utsamai, second is Vyuda Vikalpa, thick and thin. Third is, Ghana Tarala, Vyuda Vikalpa. Fourth is Vishaya Sangara. Fifth is Niyamakshama. And sixth is Tarangarangini. Now, it is very, very interesting that Jiva Goswami explains that what is the subtle phenomena by which one gives or feeds these upashakas. What is the subtle phenomena he explains? He says it begins with pratishta. Because you have the desire for pratishta, what do you do? Pujala pratishta. What do? You do Kutinati. You act duplicitously. And because you act duplicitously, you commit Jiva Himsa. And because you do Jiva Himsa, you ultimately do Nishiddhachar. You don't follow the regulative principles. So he goes from the subtlest to the gross. How? Because of the subtle desire of Pratishta Asha, in order to attain Pratishta, you act duplicitly. And when you act duplicitly, just to get false prestige, you act duplicitly, and then you commit Jiva Himsa. You might commit Vaishnava Aparadh also to other living beings or to other devotees. And then, just for the sake of Pratishta also, you commit wrong or you don't behave properly, Nishiddhachar. So like that, Jiva Goswami gives us another explanation of how this whole phenomena of these upashakas work in the heart and how they can cause obstruction to the big bhakti lata. Now, as I was mentioning, that the devotees in their sadhana should, from anarth nivritti go to artha pravritti. Now, there are certain texts written by our acharyas which exclusively speak about how from anarth nivritti you have to go to artha pravritti. And Raghunath Das Goswami mentions about in his Mana Śikṣā. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions in his book or in his Bengali poem called as the Vaishnav K. These two books are very, very specific books on how one should recognize these anarthas and with spiritual knowledge, with the sword of knowledge, cut these unwanted creepers and do also positive things. I'll just give you one example of Pratishtasha. Pratishta is the root of all offenses. It is the root of all anarthas and it is the subtlest of all the anarthas. So Raghunath Das Goswami in his Mana Śikṣā says, Pratishta asha drishtva swapachi mere dinate katam sadhu premna sprushati etan nanumana sadhatam sevasya prabudaita samantamatulam yatatam nishkasya sware. One second, I forgot the line. Last line. Let me open the file to show you this. Yes, I will show you the verse so that you can relate. Pratishta asha drishtva swapachi ramani meridinate katam sadhu premna sprishati suchire tannanumana sada tvam sevasya prabhudaita samantamatulam yata tam nishkasha tvaritam iha tam veshayati sa. So Raghunath Goswami says, Pratishta Asha, the desire for prestige. She is like a prostitute. And this prostitute is not an ordinary prostitute. Sopachi, Ramani means she is a woman, but she is a dog eater. She is first of all a prostitute, and she is a dog eating prostitute. So imagine how dirty it is. So this is how dirty Pratishta is. Ridhi Natet, it is dancing in my heart. So if the prostitute, who is a dog-eating prostitute in the form of Pratishta, I'm looking for Pratishta, means who is dancing in my heart? She's a prostitute who is a dog-eating lady. So Raghunath Das Goswami is saying, Katam sadhu premna sprasati suchir etad manumana. Then how can prema reside? Prema is also compared to a lady. Prema is a feminine word. So how a chaste lady can enter that heart? Just like in a house, the husband has a prostitute. And this prostitute is a dog-eating prostitute. So how will a chaste woman enter that house? So similarly, how in the heart sadhu premna can enter? How can it touch? So now this is the anartha. This is the anartha. Now Raghunath Das Goswami in the last two verses, next two lines, he explains what is the artha pravritti we should do. Sadatam sevasya prabhudaita samantamatulam. Always serve the pure devotee, the commander, who is incomparable. And what will this pure devotee do? Yatatam nishkasha. This pure devotee will, take that prostitute from the heart, tvaritam, and he will establish sadhu premna in your heart. So here is the anartha in the form of pratishta, and here is the solution for it. So this is anartha nivritti, and this is artha pravritti. So of course, when we get a chance, we will go through this discussion of mana Śikṣā, where how one can go through the anartha nivritti and come to the stage of artha pravritti. Beautifully, very poetically, Raghunath Das Goswami explains in 7 verses, which is part of mana Śikṣā. I just showed this because I wanted to make this point of pratishta adi. So just like a prostitute sits in the house and she is not chaste, she will call her lover, and with the union of the lover, she will give rise to children in the form of deceit, duplicity, in the form of arrogance, in the form of, so many children she'll give birth. So similarly, this Pratishta Asha will give rise to Kutinati, Jivahimsa, and then Nishiddhachar. So that's the point. So any questions regarding this verse which we discussed? We discussed this verse not only with Prabhupada's explanation, a very nice explanation, but how Jiva Goswami explains that the root cause is Pratishta, the root anartha, and then how through that subtle all other these upashakas stem out. And we saw how from anartha nivritti we should try to go to artha pravritti. We saw one verse from the mana Śikṣā. So any questions or clarifications regarding what we discussed up till now? There are 2 questions. Yes. Yes, Birendra Yadav Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, my question is this Upsakha, do they grow automatically along with this Ravanadijal, or how they grow?
Yes. Okay. The question is that do these upashakas in the form of Jiva Himsa, Pratishta, Pujalabha, and all this, Bhukti, Mukti, Vanchas, do they grow automatically or how do they grow? Now, firstly, two things we need to understand. Even if one is not cultivating the Bhaktilata, Creeper, the Jiva has unlimited seeds, bijas, in the form of samskars or what are called as vasanas. So the desires for enjoying in this world, the desire for name, fame, all these are there. Now, what Mahaprabhu is describing is that when one gets the Bhaktilata and he starts watering the Bhaktilata, along with this Bhaktilata growing, now these weeds are already there, which we have been, cultivating for lifetime in the form of bijas. They are there and we are always hankering for them. But these also now start growing. These upashakas. So what, in the next verse it will come, that if you don't recognize these upashakas and you're doing Shravanadi, but the water is, instead of going to the Bhakti Creeper, it is going to the upashakas. The upashakas will start growing and that will stunt the Bhakti Lata Creeper. So because the Bhakti Lata Creeper ultimately has to grow and ultimately reach the lotus feet of Krishna. So that is why we need to recognize these upashakas and uproot them. We should remove these weeds. This is what is happening in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Pandavas are like the rice paddy field. And along when you grow rice, there are weeds. So the Kauravas are like the weeds. And Krishna is the father of religion, where he is going to annihilate the Kauravas and establish Dharamraj Yudhishthir as the king so that then Dharma can prevail. So similarly, these upashakas are weeds. Firstly, we need to recognize them while cultivating the Bhakti Lata so that they don't grow and they don't get the Shravanadi Jal. You don't feed them. You need to recognize them and uproot them so that the Bhakti Lata can grow. So that is the reason. I hope it is clear, Virendra Yadav.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, Dr. Archana Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. There are many anarthas and there are n number of modalities we can tackle with this anarthas. So first thing which was mentioned in the slide was purification of heart. So how do we purify our heart? That is by chanting. That is my first question. And second one is like, should we tackle anarthas one by one or simultaneously all anarthas can be tackled by?
Okay, very.
And third, I would like to know the names of the books which you had mentioned earlier. Two book names.
Yes. Okay, one by one, can we take? Can you
Yes.
first narrate your first question?
We were discussing about anarthas and the modalities of the treatment, of which first one was the purification of heart. So I am a neophyte. So what I gather is like chanting should be the first step. So that the only chanting should suffice the purpose, or do I need to hear? Do I need to read the books, and do I need to go to the temple and do all the necessary things?
Yes. Okay, first let us deal with it. Now, as one is cultivating devotional service, all these upshakas, which are unlimited in varieties, what is the method? The method is especially the chanting of the holy names. So as we do the chanting of the holy names, slowly the Bhakti Lata Creeper will grow, but the upashakas also will grow. So simultaneously, many things have to be also done along with the practice of devotional service, that is chanting of the holy names. We have to be in the right association. We have to hear the philosophy of the Gita, Bhagavatam, and all other, Gaudiya Vaishnava literatures. And hearing about them, understanding about it, and then practicing in the association of devotees, all this helps us in slowly making progress in our spiritual path. So this is very important for us to do.
Okay, my second question was, should we deal one by one with the anarthas, or all anarthas can be tackled simultaneously?
Yeah, I have just shifted to another connection. So what is your second question, Mataji?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Should we deal all anarthas one by one, or can all anarthas be dealt simultaneously?
Yeah, firstly, regarding these anarthas, okay, sorry for that. There is some internet problem today. So, firstly, these gross anarthas are there. And by following strictly the regulative principles and avoiding these four don'ts, we are taking care of the gross anarthas. Now, as and when we advance in spiritual life, these other subtle anarthas also start manifesting. And if we are sincere, serious, at that point of time, you will get that right education. Krishna will provide a facility where you can get that kind of education so that we can deal with these anarthas. So gradually, as we advance, uh, uh, we have to first take care of the gross anarthas and then slowly the subtle anarthas. And you will also, at a particular level, understand that these books are, this is the necessity for me. I need to study these books in order to make further progress. Just like somebody is in 10th standard, he will refer to trigonometry and calculus. But somebody is in engineering mathematics is engineering mathematics. So that time when he has already evolved, when he's taken admission in engineering, he's studying the engineering mathematics books now, because now he's qualified to study those books. Similarly, at a particular stage in our spiritual life, we will be, by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, given access to those literatures which help us to purify from the subtle anarthas also. So, like that, gradually by one's individual endeavors, by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, by the mercy of our spiritual mentors, and one's own cultivation, slowly, slowly these gross and subtle anarthas we will recognize, and how to tackle with them. That knowledge also will come, but we should be also looking for it. Now I feel that, I should become very serious in my bhajan. So I should follow the regulative principles strictly. So what are the books which, Prabhupada is speaking about regulative principles? It is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So now I need to study Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So that is my main goal. Understand pure devotion definition. So I start focusing. Now I want to know Siddhanta very systematically. So I study the Gita philosophy very, very systematically. So like that, in every phase of our development of spiritual life, you will come across the literatures which you feel that they are really needed to make advancement. So similarly, I was speaking about this anarth nivritti to artha privritti, and especially when one is quite advanced and one also feels the need that, I should become free from the anarthas, then what is the means? So Raghunath Das Goswami is our Prayojan Acharya. And Raghunath Das Goswami has given how to become free from these anarthas. Firstly, he describes what are the gross anarthas, what are the subtle anarthas, and he gives the artha pravritti. We saw this Pratishta Asha. Pratishta Asha is compared to a prostitute who is a dog-eating prostitute who is dancing in the heart. So then how can pure prema come in the heart? So then in order to attain pure prema, one should serve the pure devotees. So at a particular point in our spiritual advancement, we will get opportunity to serve very pure devotees. That means we are ready for now becoming free from the subtle anarthas. So like that, the opportunities will come, and we do need to also study systematically these books. So in one sense, these books, especially one should study under a good teacher to understand the subject. So Śikṣā is one such book which sadhakas, those who are practicing spiritual life for some time, for few years, under their guidance of their spiritual mentor, should study this book and recognize what are these anarthas and what is the artha pravritti. The anarth nivritti and what is the artha pravritti, they should understand. I hope this makes it clear, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Yeah, fine. Okay, so let us now go to the next verse. Shek jal pana upashaka badiyaya stabdhana mula shaka badite na paye. So if you give water to the weeds, what will happen? Or if you don't distinguish, if one does not distinguish between the bhakti creeper and the other creepers, the sprinkling of water is misused because the other creepers are nourished. Shek jalapan upashaka badiyaya. Upashakas will grow while the bhakti creeper is cultivated. Stabdhan mool shaka badite na paye. The mool shaka, the bhakti creeper, is stunted and the upashakas will grow. Now Prabhupada explains very, very interesting purport. If one chants the Hare Krishna mantra while committing offenses, these unwanted creepers will grow. See, if you do namaprad while chanting, then you are giving, the nourishment to the weeds. So the bhakti vancha, mukti vancha, puja la pratishtha, all these weeds start growing. So that is why one should be very attentive in his chanting, so that when one attentively chants, he gives nourishment to the bhakti lata. The bhakti lata is, sown in the heart. Now the heart here is not the physical heart or the emotional heart. Here heart refers to the soul. And we have faith. This faith is faith of the soul. That is Shraddha, pure faith. And that is why we have to attentively chant so that the mantra goes straight to the heart and nourishes the heart, and the bhakti lata grows. Otherwise, in the subtle body, there are unlimited desires. In the subtle body, there are unlimited impressions. And if you are not attentive, then the weeds will get nourishment and they will start growing. So one of the ways which the weeds grow is if we chant with aparad while committing offenses. One should not take advantage of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra for some material profit. As mentioned in 159, Nishiddhachar Kutinati Jeev himself, Labha Puja Pratishtadi Yata Upashaka Gan. The unwanted creepers have been described by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He states that if one hears and chants without trying to give up offenses, one becomes materially attached to sense gratification. Very, very interesting thing to know. That if devotees keep on chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra with offenses, you will feel, Arey, instead of becoming spiritually advanced, my anarthas have increased. What is happening? Because I am giving what? I am sprinkling the water to the Upashakas. They are growing. One may also desire freedom from material bondage like the Mayavadis, or one may become attached to the Yoga Siddhis and desire wonderful yogic powers. So Bhukti Vancha, he has spoken here. Now this is Mukti Vancha. The Mukti Vanchas or Siddhi Vanchas might come up. If one is attached to the wonderful material activities, one is called Siddhalobi, greedy for material perfection. One may also become victimized by diplomatic or crooked behavior, or one may associate with women for illicit sex. So Nisiddhachar. One may make a show of devotional service like the Prakat Sahajiyas, or one may try to support his philosophy by joining some caste or identifying himself with a certain dynasty, claiming a monopoly on spiritual advancement. So here are the deviations, the subtle deviations which can come. I'm not so advanced, but I imitate like the gopis of Vrindavan. Oh, I am also some gopi in Krishna Leela, and I start to imitating those exalted moods and exalted bhavas. So these are called as the Prakat Sahajiyas, who imitate very, very exalted activities of the gopis. They think they are gopis in Krishna Leela, and they try to imitate those activities without being free from the bodily concept of life also. So we may try to make some devotional, make show of some devotional service, or we might subtly deviate from the philosophy. These are subtle. There can be mental deviations. There can be intellectual deviations. So Prabhupada is speaking about some intellectual deviations, that we might come up with some other philosophy and try to, have a separate group and separate following. Suppose we are at the stage of Bhajan Kriya where Pujala Pratishta, we have a lot of following. And to maintain our following, because we want followers, we separate them from the main institute, and then we, start our own preaching, and with this following try to, present a philosophy which is not according to Siddhanta. So this is kind of an intellectual deviation. These are quite subtle. Thus, with the support of family tradition, one may become a pseudo-guru or a so-called spiritual master. So, I'm not qualified to become a guru because Anarth Nivritti has not fully happened. But because I have some following, I want to become a pseudo-guru. So then I separate this group, separate the followers, and I, because the bona fide organization is not giving me the guru title, I will go and take the guru title from some other guru and become a guru and so-called spiritual master. This is the anartha. This is the anartha. Becoming a false guru. One may become attached to the 4 sinful activities: illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. One may consider a Vaishnava to belong to a mundane caste or creed. One may think this is a Hindu Vaishnava, this is a European Vaishnava. European Vaishnavas are not allowed to enter the temples. In other words, one may consider Vaishnavas in terms of birth, thinking one to be Brahmana Vaishnava, another to Shudra Vaishnava, another to Mlecha Vaishnava, and so on. One may also try to carry out a professional business by means of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra or reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Or one may try to increase his monetary strength by illegal means. Bhagavat Sapta, you pay me 7 lakhs, I will come and do 7 days katha in your home. So doing pure devotional activity for mundane profits. Also, one may become a cheap Vaishnava by trying to chant in a secluded place for material adoration. Or one may desire mundane reputation by making compromises with non-devotees concerning one's philosophy or spiritual life. Or one may become a supporter of a hereditary caste system. So all different permutations and combinations, Prabhupada is saying. All these are pitfalls of personal sense gratification. Just to cheat some innocent people, one makes a show of advanced spiritual life and becomes known as a sadhu, mahatma, or a religious person. All this means that the so-called devotee has been victimized by all these unwanted creepers, and that the real creeper, the Bhakti Lata, has been stunted. So this is how Prabhupada is speaking about these upashakas. Now, it's quite elaborate. Each one Prabhupada has described very systematically. Now, the sum and substance here is, if one is very sincere, mark these points, very sincere and very serious in spiritual life, he has to be very, very, simple and straightforward. Whenever these anarthas come, he has to sincerely pray to the Lord, sincerely pray to the spiritual master, and sincerely reveal his heart and deal with these anarthas. So the crux is sincerity. We have to be sincere. We have to be sincere. And these anarthas are deep-rooted. The tendency to cheat, the tendency to do activities because only we want position, power, or we want some name and fame, or we want to act duplicitously for all these things, profit, adoration. These are anarthas, and one should be very, very sincere and honest in order to practice his bhajan. And if we are sincere and honest, then we'll be protected from these weeds, and devotees will help us, Krishna will help us, spiritual master will help us to uproot these weeds and slowly make progress to attain pure devotion. Any questions or clarifications regarding this? Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Prabhu, since we were all in the traditional way of life, fortunately we come into the association. So we still have some traditional things to be done. That is related to even the devotional service only, not as per what our system is. So there are certain things which we need to follow, like our traditional family, deities or family type of temple, all those things. So is it will come under this, or we can do without skipping it?
See, when we speak about traditional values, this doesn't come under the Upashaka, it will come under Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. So when I will speak about pure devotion definition, which we will see in the next week, that time I will deal with this, because there are certain religious ceremonies which we are following through family tradition. And now we have come across the Krishna conscious philosophy, which is the highest. Bhakti means service to the Supreme Lord, and that is the only worshipable object. That is the conclusion of the Vedas. So along with this practice, how to balance this other traditional values which we have attained through our culture and our forefathers, and what is the difference between the two, how to balance it. All that we will see when we see the definition of pure devotional service. Okay. Now, with respect to this discussion, if you have any other questions, I would like to take on the subject matter which we discussed. Any other questions, clarifications with respect to the Upashakas and how they get stunted the Bhakti Lata creeper? It's quite an interesting description, and it is sometimes devotees become very serious after hearing this. But one should repeatedly hear it, understand it, and very sincerely practice his devotional life. And when one should be very honest in his dealings, honest with his spiritual mentors, honest to the deities, honest to the spiritual master. And that is the path, sincerity. We cannot cheat Krishna. We might cheat ourselves, but we cannot cheat Krishna. So if we are very sincere, then these anarthas will be uprooted, and the pure Bhakti Lata will grow and ultimately give us the fruit of Krishna prema. So we will stop here today, and we'll continue our discussion where Mahaprabhu, after describing these second kind of obstacles in the form of Upashakas, the first kind of obstacle was the Apradhas, the second kind of obstacles were the Upashakas. So after speaking about this, then he will now speak about the definition of pure devotional service, which we will see in the next verse, next class. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Chaitanya-Caritāmṛta ki jai. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami ki jai. Hare Krishna.